안녕하세요. 여러분의 한국어 선생님 고빌리입니다. This is the 8th and final episode in this series where I analyze the Korean speaking of the group ATEEZ, an 8-member group that debuted in 2018. If you're new here, I'm a Korean teacher. I have over 12 years of teaching experience and 20 years of learning the Korean language. And in this video, I'll be breaking down the Korean speech of Jongho. I'll be giving my professional analysis of him as a Korean speaker, as well as sharing any unique expressions or words that he uses, analyzing his handwriting, and sharing anything unique about how he speaks Korean.
한라뻥. 오케이? 다시 보여주세요.
But before that, I need to thank the sponsor of this video, my Patreon supporters and channel members. You are the reason that I don't have to put sponsorships in all of these videos. And if you would also like to help support my channel to make more and better Korean language content, please consider becoming a Patreon member or channel member. And there are links in the description box of this video. As a member, you'll also get access to bonus content like Korean cheat sheets, lesson outlines, and worksheets, and you'll get to help me choose the next group that I analyze in one of these videos. So let's get into today's topic, Jongho. Jongho was born in the year 2000 in a district called Ilsan, which is in the city of Goyang and is located just northwest of Seoul. And this is also the same place that Uyong was born. However, Jongho was only born in Ilsan and he moved to the city of Seoul at a very young age where he grew up.
2000년도 10월 12일에 경기도 고양 일산에서 태어났어. 태어나기만 일산에서 태어나가지고 일산에 대해서 잘 몰라.
And although he was only born 1 or 2 years later than the other members, Jongho is the 막내, meaning the youngest member in the group. And that's determined by the year that someone was born. Because in Korean culture, people who are born in the same year can be considered 친구, meaning friends. While someone born just a few days earlier than you, but in the previous year, could be considered a 형 or oppa or 누나 or 언니, even if you're close friends. And that's because the year you were born can affect how you speak to other people. So when I learned that he was the youngest, I was fully expecting him to speak very respectfully, to act the most reserved, and to be the politest member. And honestly, after the other 7 members I saw all turned out to be goofballs, I think I'm ready to analyze someone who's a bit calmer and quieter. So let's talk about my first impression of Jongho.
네가 지금 남청동 살지? 나 전화 받을 시간 없다! 빨리 받아라! 빨리 받고! 싸우간다 가고! 빨리 목타도 가고!
He just pieces out. Here he's doing an impression of a famous line from the movie 범죄와의 전쟁, which is called Nameless Gangster in English.
저희 서장님과 관계가 어떻게?
너가 서장 남천동 살지? 네가 지금 남청동 살지?
So yeah, Jongho isn't the extremely calm and quiet member I was expecting. Well, kind of, and I'll talk about that. But I was impressed by how many talents he has, not only doing funny impressions, but he also enjoys telling dad jokes. And here's a clip. Here the members are trying to make jokes about banana milk. And in Korean, banana is banana. And Jongho's joke is to pretend that he's picking up a barbell and then say pa, doa, which sounds like the first 2 syllables in the word banana. So it means ba, so the barbell, and doa, meaning put down. So put down the barbell. And this is such a corny joke, but it's so simple. And his straight expression when he says it makes all the other members burst out laughing. And here's another joke that he did right after that one.
자, 다음 갈게요. 빨대. 자, 다음.
빨아주세요.
대.
대차게.
Here they're making jokes about a straw, and the word straw is 빨대. So Jongho first says suck on it, which starts with the first syllable 빨, and then 대차게, which starts with the second syllable 대 and means powerfully.
대.
대차게.
And anyway, here's another one.
바나나 해줘. 바로 짠을 할 건데요.
나.
나처럼 따라하시면 돼요.
나.
Here he's saying a sentence that starts with pa and then na again. So he starts off by saying with pa, we're going to say cheers, and then na, just follow me. And finally, this is where you normally make a joke starting with na, but he just screams, na! But most of his humor is, I'd say, more subtle. And I noticed that he'd often make sarcastic comments or just say something funny with a straight face. Like in this clip where he pretends to welcome everyone to a debate and he announces, "I want to say thank you all for attending, but I'm not really thankful that you're here." And he does it with a completely straight face and with an announcer style of speaking.
참석해 주셔서 대단히 감사하진 않지만 감사드린다고 인사 전해드리고 싶고요.
솔직하시네.
Besides his sense of humor, though, I realize that Jongho is a really talented person. And I'm not just talking about his singing or dancing, which is impressive, but he has several hidden talents, which he sometimes shows off here and there, like magic tricks.
하나, 둘, 셋. 오케이, 됐습니다.
Or he also knows how to make a vortex in a bottle by spinning it. I can't do this.
잘하네.
야, 근데 그게 봐봐. 6시, 1시, 12시가 이렇게 하면 되잖아. 근데 이걸 그냥
And whenever he shows off one of his talents, he always does it honestly and not just to get attention. And I get the feeling that he actually has a lot more hidden talents and that he's only showing us a few of them here and there as they come up naturally. In fact, here he is just casually adding an echo effect to his voice.
에코요? 오, 잘한다.
Or I watched an episode where they were arm wrestling and I found out that Jongho is actually pretty good at that too.
Thank you very much.
So when I was preparing for this video, I went back and rewatched the video The Real. Mainly because, well, I wanted to check if he uses any dialect, but also because it's just a cool song. But then right before the video finishes, I saw him do this at the end.
이런 게 바로 멋입니다.
Apparently, he can also split an apple in half with his bare hands. Random, I know, but really cool. And it's not just apples. In fact, here's him splitting open a watermelon by just like punching it in half. And he can do the same thing with a bunch of other fruits I found, like pears and melons. But even with all of these awesome talents and being one of the funniest members, Jongho still manages to somehow be, in my opinion, the most normal member of ATEEZ. And by that I mean Jongho seems to be the most relaxed, the most reserved, the most polite, and also the most straightforward with his words. So in a way, some of my assumptions about him were correct, just not in the way that I was thinking. It's like hiding inside of Jongho isn't just a singer, but is more of a general performer, like maybe an actor, or as this person said, perhaps a teacher.
종호 씨는 연예인이 맞으세요?
예,
연예인의 길이 맞다고 느끼세요?
연예인의 길이요?
아닌가 봐.
솔직하게 잘 표현도 잘 안 되고 계속 낯가리게 되고 자신감이 옛날보다는 점점 줄고 있는 느낌?
그 이유를 몇 가지 말씀드리려고 하는데 본인은 가르치는 게 어울리게 태어났어요.
This was an episode where all of the members go to see a fortune teller for what's known as 관상, which is kind of like a horoscope, but based on the way that your face looks. And the guest asks him if he really thinks of himself as a celebrity, and then says that he thinks Jongho might be better suited to be a teacher. Now, while I disagree with what the guest is saying here, I liked his response to the question. He said that he feels less confident in himself than he used to, but not that he doesn't necessarily see himself as a celebrity. Now, I could see Jongho being a teacher, maybe teaching singing or dance, but with all of his special talents and hobbies, I still see him as mostly a performer. So maybe he'll end up being a famous actor someday if he ever wants to switch careers. Okay, so now I want to share my impression of his Korean speaking. And anyone who's listened to him speak for more than a few seconds and who knows some Korean can probably tell you that he has a more conservative style of speaking. Being the youngest member, he tends to speak politely, not only just to the other members, but just in general. And I'll give you a few examples in a moment of his intonation so you can see this. But overall, Jongho's Korean sounds the most standard, like the kind of Korean speech I'd hear from, okay, maybe from a teacher or from an announcer.
네, 안녕하세요. 앵커 최종호입니다. 네, 스위스에서 온 스미스 씨는 33세
새끼가 어딨어, 셋인데, 앵커. 욕안 돼요?
In that clip, he's trying to say a tongue twister, and it's filled with the consonant 시옷, which is the letter S. But he messes up really bad and inserts a swear word, which isn't in the tongue twister at all, but does happen to start with that same letter. And then Woo-young laughs at him for it. Now, we previously saw another member who also sounds like he's an announcer, and that was Jun-ho. But his style of speaking is quite different. Jun-ho sounds to me like he could record a TV ad or be the host of a radio show, and we saw that he hosted a radio show together with Hongjung.
좋습니다. 가차없이 진행되는 아이돌 라디오 시즌3 실시간 방송은요, NC 유니버스 어플을 통해 보실 수가 있고요.
Jongho's voice, on the other hand, I could imagine him as like an official spokesperson for a company, but they both have really clear voices in their own unique way. And another thing that's unique about his speech is his dialect, and by this I mean actually his complete lack of dialect. When he speaks, there is no dialect. He sounds extremely clear and his intonation is smooth and his pronunciation is flawless. He's like the ideal Korean speaker. In the music video for the reel, some of the other members get to say a line of dialect, and here are clips of those again to remind you.
이게 바로 무신기라. 이런 게 바로 무신기라. 이것이 멋이요. 춤 들어가요.
But for Jongho, they gave him the only line of polite standard Korean in the entire song.
이런 게 바로 멋입니다.
What he says is 이런 게 바로 멋입니다. And that ending, 입니다, is just a standard Korean ending. So the type of Korean you're going to hear in Seoul or on TV or in textbooks. Okay, back to his age for a second. I said that he's the youngest member, and in Korean culture, if you were born younger than someone else, then even if you're friends, you still wouldn't speak in what's known as 반말, meaning casual speech, with a few exceptions, like if you're dating someone or if they're a direct family member, or if you and your friend are really close and they gave you permission to speak casually with them. But in ATEEZ's case, all of the members live together and work together like family members, so they can also speak to each other more like a family. And that means that even though he's the youngest, he can speak in 반말, in casual speech, toward the other members. And most of the time he does. Here's a clip of him just saying something with a casual ending. He says, 안 돼, when speaking to all of the other members.
우리 나이순 8명으로 나가지고 OB, YB로 가면 안 돼?
And here's one more clip with another verb that has a casual ending, and here he says 있어.
나는 아직까지도 한 번도 가보지 못한 로망의 술집이 있어.
However, there are still some things that Jongho won't say to the other members, even while speaking casually. And one of those is the word 너, meaning you. This word is also casual speech, but it's only used when someone's the same age as you. Remember, that means born the same year as you in Korea. Or if someone is younger than you. And again, this is only used for people who you're already friends with or at least already well acquainted with. Don't say 너 to strangers unless you want them to get upset. And while all of the other members are older than Jongho and could use this word to him, Jongho won't use it back since it could sound a bit rude. And here's a clip I have of Seonghwa, who's the oldest member, using this word to Jongho.
근데 너도 나와야 될 것 같은데, 종호야?
Okay, so Jongho speaks politely, and I talked about how he sounds very clear and how he uses standard Korean, but there's one more part to his voice I wanted to point out, and that's his intonation. In fact, I used an example of Jongho's intonation back when I was talking about Hongjung's intonation. And here's that clip again. Now, this time pay attention to the start of his sentence, the middle of his sentence, so whether it has a lot of waves or not, and then how he ends his sentences.
저랑 제 피부톤에 어울리는 색상은 네이비인 것 같은데? 네이비.
You've seen enough intonation now to hopefully notice this, but his intonation doesn't sound flat. It has character, but he has all of the standard features you would expect in a skillful Korean speaker. Each part of his sentences starts by going up and then back down, with exception of the part where he's asking a question to himself, which goes up at the end. He doesn't suddenly drop the ends of his sentences after the last syllable like we heard from Woo-young.
근데 이거 수면 내시고 내 정신을 할 수 있는 게 아니잖아.
Nor is it that extremely smooth intonation that we heard from Yeosang.
솔직히 저도 아직 잘 모르겠어요.
Also, we can compare it with Hongjung's intonation, which was, well, it's Hongjung.
좀 무서워. 약간 발개 벗겨지는 느낌이라 이거 지금 어떻게 해야 될지 모르겠네.
And let's listen to that clip of Jongho's intonation just one more time.
저랑 제 피부톤에 어울리는 색상은 네이비인 것 같은데? 네이비.
Okay, now let's listen to a clip of Jongho when he's asking a question.
노래 틀면 안 되는 거 아니냐고요?
Notice that there isn't really any waving going up and down in his sentence. Instead, he drops the intonation a bit so it doesn't sound flat, but the rest of his intonation is pretty standard and what I think you should be trying to imitate if you're trying to learn Korean. So if you're looking for a member to shadow, meaning listening to what they say and trying to repeat it exactly as they say it in order to improve your pronunciation and intonation, then I'll also give a recommendation to Jongho's Korean. I think he sounds great. In fact, I'm okay calling his Korean a perfect example of what you should adjust your ears to. And there was only one small thing that I found that you might or might notice, and it wasn't even an issue, but see if you can notice it in this clip.
오늘 2023 속담을 다시금 개정하는
마지막까지 말을 저시네요.
그러니까요. 이 풀릴 때 됐는데 이제.
이게 살짝 달라갖고 어딜 보고 해야 될지 모르겠어.
Jongho has an occasional stutter. In this clip, the members were even teasing him. Hongjung asks him, "Why are you stuttering?" And San tells him it's okay to relax since the episode is almost over. So Jongho may sometimes repeat what he says or trip over his words at times, or just try to fill the empty space by making sounds.
끝까지 추억 같이 좋은 추억 쌓아가지고 딱 12시를 딱 보냈으면 좋겠습니다.
This isn't an issue though at all because you can easily notice when he does this and he'll just continue speaking afterwards as if nothing happened. So I won't take away any points for this. It's just a part of what makes him unique. Plus, he doesn't even do it often.
난 지금은 멀쩡한데?
Okay, now I want to take just a moment to talk about his handwriting. So let's take a look at this letter that he wrote to ATEEZ. And my first impression is not the worst writing I've seen, but not the best. It's all legible though, but keep in mind this is a letter that he's writing to ATEEZ, so it's going to be a decent example of what he can do. So I notice a few interesting ways he writes things. Look at how he writes the consonant jiut, which is the J letter. He writes this really unique, and by unique, I mean hard to read. First, this is what the letter can normally look like, and I wrote two common ways you might see it, and both ways are fine. And now look at how Jongho writes this letter. You can see this letter where he writes 좋은 추억들, and I'm actually writing it here neater than what he does, just to show you kind of how it resembles the original letter, because this is also how he sometimes writes these letters. And this isn't only for the consonant jiut, but also the consonant chiut, which is written the same way, but with an extra line on top of it. I feel like Jongho should be careful because if he were to write some of these letters on a rock, he might accidentally open up a Stargate. But that's not the only unique thing that he does when writing. He also writes the consonant lir, and that's the L, kind of like a snake, which we've seen a lot and isn't out of the ordinary. But he does this thing with writing some of his vowels where he'll actually connect the previous consonant into the vowel completely. Not just write it sort of connected with a bit of a gap like you might see in calligraphy, but completely connecting it. Take a look at this part where he writes 1년 동안에, and you can see that he connects the syllable 동 completely. And I'll show you here several examples of what normal connecting looks like next to what Jongho does. You can see how although the consonant digut, that's the letter D, can be connected to the vowel O, the shape of the consonant isn't actually connected that much. It still looks separate from the vowel O. It's like the pen just flowed from writing one letter to the next. And this sort of writing is really common in both calligraphy or just regular Korean if you're going a bit fast. And now here's what Jongho does. I want to share another example where he does this because he does it a lot, not just with this one vowel. And you can really see it in this part too, where he writes 계속 만들 거예요. You can see that he connects the consonant 시옷, that's the letter S, directly into the vowel O. And then at the end, when he writes 요, he connects the consonant iang, that's the circle, directly into the vowel 요. And if you know to look for this, it's really easy to spot his handwriting among not just the other members, but probably among any native Korean. And I have a collection here of some short notes he wrote to all the other members, so let's see if we can find any more in here. Now, these are notes that he intended for the other members to read, his family members essentially, so he wrote them a bit more rushed, but it's mostly the same sort of writing. So look at what he wrote to Hongjung. He wrote, 항상 수고가 많으십니다. And here he actually connected not just the vowels in one syllable, but in all three. 수고가 is written connected together, and I mean, I can read it just fine, and any native Korean speaker would be able to read this fine too, but if you've just learned the Korean alphabet, it's going to be very difficult to follow along. Anyway, he says, you always work really hard, and then he continues, 제가 홍중 씨한테 평소에 하고 싶었던 말들이 있어요. There's something that I've always wanted to tell you. 우리를 챙겨주고 보듬어 주어서 감사해요. So thank you for watching over and taking care of us. All right, now, I'm not going to cover all of these notes, but I want to point out just one more, which is this letter that he wrote to San. And he writes this sentence, 밥 좀 많이 먹어요, which means eat some food. So Jongho here is scolding San for not eating enough food, I guess. And he's jokingly shouting it, so he adds 2 exclamation marks. Now, first, the word 좀 is different from 좀, which means a little or a bit. 좀 is something that you might shout at someone when you want them to do something, or if you want them to stop doing something, and it means basically like, hey, or come on. But look at how he wrote the word pop, meaning rice or a meal. The consonant piup, that's the letter P, he just wrote it like a bowl. And I can only tell what letter it is because the bottom of the bowl is a little thicker, meaning that he wrote the horizontal line there. But the word 좀 looks even funnier because he wrote it with that consonant jiat again here. And because he connected all of the letters together like he normally does, instead of 좀, it actually looks more like he wrote 똥, which means poop. And while I'm teasing Jongho about his writing, again, it's all legible and it makes his writing really easy to spot and it just adds to his fun personality. Okay, now there's still one more thing I need to talk about, and that's Jongho's filler words. And I didn't notice him using any filler words especially more than others. He did use all of the normal ones that we've seen the other members use, such as 이제 or 사실, and he does like using those too, but more than filler words, what I noticed is he uses a lot of softener words. Words that they're like filler words, but instead of only filling up empty space, they also serve to make the sentence sound softer. These would be words like kind of, or like, or just, or sort of in English. So here's a clip and then I'll explain.
가는 게 뭔가 되게 힐링되는 약간 그런 느낌적인 느낌이 되게 뭔가 저한테도 좋은 시간이었던 것 같습니다. 약간 이런 식으로 제가 걸어놓습니다. 여기가 저의 방이고요. 뭔가 더 설명할 게 없네요.
So the first one I noticed him using is 뭔가. Now, 뭔가 means something or like, and it's used when you're not sure how to describe something, but at the same time, it also makes what you're saying sound less direct. And the next word also does the same thing, and that's 약간. 약간 means somewhat, and it's also for when you're trying to soften the description of something. Another one to look out for is 그냥. Now, 그냥 is actually a regular word, and it means just, and it's commonly used, but it's also used as a filler word to kind of soften what you're saying. Kind of like you're downplaying something. You're not saying it is, but you're saying it's just something. And there are other words like these I heard Jongho using as well, but nothing that really stood out. Overall, he doesn't really overuse filler words or rely on them, and he speaks fairly concise. Okay. And I could keep going on about Jongho, but that's enough for this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and also subscribe for more Korean learning content. Thanks again to the sponsor of this video, my Patreon supporters and channel members. And if you would also like to help support me so I can make new and better Korean learning content, there are links in the video description box. Researching for this video series really gave me a greater respect for ATEEZ, and I hope that this series also gave you a better look into each of the members and their language. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. 그럼 다음에 또 봐. All right, I'm gonna try this. Let's see if I can do it too. Gosh, this is so hard. How do you do this, man? No, it's too hard. How do you do this? Oh, I hear something. I heard something. Oh my goodness. How do you How do you do that? This way?